Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Wanted to start today's video by saying that if you have not yet watched yesterday's video and you're a college football fan or know someone who is, please go back and watch yesterday's video and leave me your thoughts and your comments on what you feel about my opinion of the top 10 best college football stadium atmospheres. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to do a quick review of this past weekend's NASCAR race. The reason why I'm waiting until Friday to do it is because there's been a lot of NASCAR news coming down the pipeline this week, but I think they're done for the week. So we'll talk about that coming up tomorrow. And of course, there's two cup races this weekend. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. But today, I want to talk a little bit about the NBA playoffs. Not really going to go real in depth about it. I mean, if you ask me right now who I think is going to win the NBA Finals of the four teams that are left, I would say the Milwaukee Bucks, but that's just a pick. I could be wrong. I've already been wrong. If you've been following the channel, you know when the playoffs started, I picked the Nuggets, but that was my fault because I read an article about Jamal Murray being hurt, and I misread it, and I thought it said if they get past the Blazers, he would be back by the second round, and I knew they were good enough to beat the Blazers without him, which they did. But then when I watched Game 2 against the Blazers and I seen him sitting on the sidelines and they said he was out for the playoffs, I said, well, I'm wrong because I knew the Nuggets weren't going to go to the NBA Finals without their best player. Otherwise, I wouldn't have picked them from the get-go. But I said when the playoffs started that the Lakers wouldn't win it, which they didn't. They went out easily in the first round. And I also said the Nets wouldn't win it, and they didn't. They put up a fight against the Bucks and almost won the series, but Kevin Durant just got too tired and couldn't do it anymore. He played all 53 minutes in their Game 7 loss in the second round against the Bucks. Of course, James Harden played, but just like I said when the playoffs started, his name should be James Harden because there's no D in Harden. And, of course, Kyrie Irving got hurt. You can bet that Kyrie Irving is not going to go through an NBA season and not get hurt. If Kyrie Irving was to brush his teeth too hard and cut his gums, he'd probably be out for about 2 weeks. If Kyrie Irving put his shoes on and tied his laces too tight, he'd probably be out about a month. And now the Nets have showed the downside of having three big superstars, and that's all you have. I know they say this day and time the NBA is all about superstars, and the Nets have three superstars. Well, really it's 2.5 because Kyrie Irving is out more than he plays. But outside of those three superstars, that's all they have. And if you watched their Game 7 against the Bucks in the second round, they interviewed Steve Nash, the Nets coach, before the fourth quarter started, and they asked him if he was concerned about Kevin Durant having played the whole game so far, and he said, well, we got to do what we got to do. We have no choice. So Steve Nash was pretty much just telling everybody that's all we have. Outside of Harden and Irving and Durant, the Nets don't have anybody else. And that's why they had to let Durant play all 53 minutes. And if they don't go out and sign at least one decent player or trade for at least one decent player in the offseason, they won't win it next year because it's going to be those same three guys, and Kyrie's going to be out half the season again. They need somebody else, but it's not just the Nets this year. If you look all around the playoffs, the Jazz are out now, but their best player, Donovan Mitchell, he got hurt against the Suns and tried to keep playing and did keep playing, but you could tell he was not 100%. James Harden was also not 100%. Of course, the Clippers are still playing now against the Suns in the Western Conference Finals, and they're putting up a good fight. They have not won a game yet, but putting up a good fight. But their best player is Kawhi Leonard, and he's out. and I don't think you'll see him return. The Clippers have yet to announce that he's officially out. But if you've been following the NBA, you know back when he played for the San Antonio Spurs, the reason why he left San Antonio was because he was hurt and did not feel like he could play. But the Spurs doctors and trainers kept pressuring him to play, and when the season ended, he left. So if Kawhi says he's hurt, I don't think the Clippers are going to make him play. Otherwise, he'll leave Los Angeles too. They've still got Paul George. Now, Paul George normally is nothing in the playoffs compared to what he is in the regular season, but he's actually playing pretty good right now. And of course, the Hawks have Trae Young, who is a phenomenal superstar, but they don't really have a whole lot outside of him. They've got some role players, but it's mainly guys where one of them will put up 11 or 12 and the rest of them put up 3 or 4. And the only way they're going to win the series against the Bucks is if somebody does something, because they can't expect Trae Young to score 50 points in every single game. Otherwise, by game 6 or game 7, he's going to be just like Durant was in the last round. He's going to be gassed. But there's also some other NBA news besides the playoffs. Of course, the Pelicans are looking for a new coach. If you recall, when I did my NBA talk back when the playoffs first started, I talked about the Celtics needing a coach because Brad Stevens is now their president of basketball operations because of Danny Ainge retiring. So they need a coach. And the Blazers had already fired Terry Stotts. Now you've got the Pelicans looking for a coach because Zion Williamson, not himself, but his family came out and said that he wasn't happy. And so they fired Stan Van Gundy to show Zion Williamson that they're willing to do whatever he wants them to do to try to keep him there. I wouldn't have him. Now, I know I have not yet said this on the channel, because if you've been following the channel, you know that I try to be unbiased and informative and objective and not talk about my teams and give my honest opinions. But my NBA team is the New Orleans Pelicans. I don't talk about them because, for one, they suck. And for two, I don't want all the NBA fans that watch the NBA videos think that I'm only going to talk about the Pelicans, because that's not true. But they are my team, but they're in this position, and it's their own fault because they had Monty Williams, who is now coaching the Phoenix Suns, who look like they're fixing to go to the NBA Finals. And Monty Williams took them to the playoffs. And then the next year he missed the playoffs, and for some reason they fired him. And then they brought on Alvin Gentry, who's coached at 85 NBA teams and sucked everywhere he's been. But they hired him, and he was terrible. And then they hired Stan Van Gundy, who I think, in my opinion, was terrible. But I wouldn't have drafted Zion Williamson. A good friend of mine at work that I've already talked about here before on the channel, named Ethan, is a Georgia football fan. But he's only a half a Georgia fan because he's a Duke fan during basketball season. And I told him back when Zion was at Duke that I wouldn't draft Zion because Zion was out there with Duke, and he's 3 times bigger than everybody else, but he didn't make Duke any better. Zion Williamson's a stat stuffer. He's just like Matthew Ryan and Matthew Stafford of the NFL. He's just like Bryce Harper in Major League Baseball. He's a stat stuffer. He puts up good numbers. He's always going to put up good numbers, but he does not make his team any better. But they have Zion through at least 2023, but his family says he's not happy. So if things don't change, he'll be out of there in about 3 more years. So the Pelicans need a new coach, but also the Dallas Mavericks need a new coach because after 13 years, Rick Carlisle is not returning. Him and Luka Doncic apparently were not getting along good, and since Luka is a superstar, then Rick Carlisle just supposedly stepped down. You don't know if he actually stepped down or if he was forced to step down, but supposedly he stepped down. But also now you've got Ben Simmons, who looks like the 76ers are going to trade him, and he's supposed to be a superstar, but in my opinion, he's not a superstar. When a point guard can't make a three-pointer and can't make a free throw, he's not a superstar. If anybody thinks he's a superstar, they have completely butchered the modern-day English language, or they don't know what a superstar is, because when all you can do is make dunks and layups, you're not a superstar. I have never seen a point guard be that atrocious at shooting free throws. Shaquille O'Neal was a better free throw shooter than Ben Simmons is. And it looks like they're going to trade him, but they might have waited too late because his contract is so big and he's played so bad that if they trade him, they're not really going to get a whole lot for him. But between him and Embiid, I would definitely pick Embiid over having Ben Simmons, but they're going to choose one or the other. But I think the 76ers also hurt themselves by doing it because when Ben Simmons was at LSU, everybody said he couldn't shoot. That was his weakness. He couldn't shoot. And then the 76ers draft him, and they pay him $30 million a year. So if you're a basketball player and you're getting paid $30 million a year, you're going to think that you're doing something right. But it's clear that in the offseason, Ben Simmons ain't shooting free throws and Ben Simmons ain't shooting threes. And when they got put out in the last round, he had a wide open dunk and he passed it because he thought he was going to get fouled. He knows he cannot shoot free throws, so he has lost all confidence. But I do think he'll be out. Hopefully the 76ers can trade him and get somebody good to take his place. But I also want to ask real quick for all the NBA fans, if you think this year's playoffs is good or bad for the game. And the reason why I say that is because the supposed diehard NBA fans are complaining, saying that it's bad because all the big-time superstars like Luka and like LeBron are all out of the playoffs. The only real big superstar that's still in it is Giannis. And I say that because, yes, Kawhi's a superstar, but Kawhi's hurt. And Chris Paul is a superstar, but he's out right now. Supposedly he'll be back for Game 3. We'll have to wait and find out. But this may be a good thing for the Suns because he's out due to protocol, not because of injury. But Chris Paul is just like Kyrie Irving. He can't go through a full season healthy. So this may be a blessing in disguise for them because he's out now because of protocol, not because of an injury. So if he comes back, maybe he can actually make it through the rest of the playoffs without getting hurt. And if he can, the Suns have a pretty good chance to win the NBA Finals. But I'm still going to stick with the Bucks just because of how dominant Giannis has been so far. But anyway, back to my question. These supposed diehard NBA fans are saying that it's bad for the game because the only way to get casual fans to watch is to have a big-time superstar in the playoffs. And now that there's not any big-time superstars left outside of Giannis, that the supposed casual NBA fan ain't going to watch because they're not going to know any of the names of anybody that's playing. But I disagree. I think it's good because there are some people that like a sport, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, whatever. But, the regular season and all these sports last so long that they only wait until the playoffs. And they watch the playoffs not because of a certain player, but it's because it's the playoffs. So I still think the casual fans are going to watch, especially when you look and the ratings so far TV-wise in the playoffs are up 50%, which tells me that people are watching, whether they're superstars out there or not. But if you're an NBA fan, please give me your thoughts on whether or not you think it's a good idea and good for the game that here we are down to the Final Four and the only big-time superstar left is Giannis. Do you think that's good for the sport or bad for the sport? I think it's good for the sport. I think it shows that you don't have to be like the Nets or the Warriors and have a super team in order to win. If you have one or two superstars and some role players, then you can win. You don't have to have all superstars in order to win. Otherwise, you're like the Nets. You've got 3 superstars and nobody else. And if one of your superstars ain't playing, then you're stuck. So I think it's actually good, and I think it also shows other teams that you don't have to have all superstars. You can have 1 or 2 superstars and role players and still win. But give me your thoughts on that and what you think. And do you agree with me that the Bucks are going to win it, or will you pick the Hawks, or will you pick the Clippers, or will you pick the Suns? And like I said, tomorrow we're going to be talking about NASCAR. That'll be coming up tomorrow. But today, let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. I had to quit my job at the Goodyear factory because I stayed tired all the time. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of three. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.